SuperTalk Mississippi media production.
If you're feeling anxious about your investments with all the economic volatility and chaos in Washington, tune in to SuperTalk Jackson on Wednesdays from 9 to 10 a.m. and Sundays from 8:30 to 9:30 a.m. for Element Wealth Radio with Jeremy Nelson. Learn more at myelementwealth.com.
This is Gerard Gibert, and thank you for listening to MidDays here on SuperTalk Mississippi.
MidDays with Gerard Gibert is on the air. MidDays with Gerard Gibert is powered by C-Spire. Power your home or business with C-Spire Fiber. To learn more, visit supertalk.fm/C-Spire. C-Spire Fiber powers SuperTalk Mississippi. Get ready to go beyond the headlines and join a meaningful conversation with people from around the state. You're listening to MidDays with Gerard Gibert here on SuperTalk Mississippi.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Middays, SuperTalk Mississippi. I'm your host, Gerard Gibert, along with Rhino in the Element Wealth Studio, guiding you through the middle of your day with facts, fodder, and fine music on this
Friday, y'all.
Dang right, we have made it. All right, little weather moving in, I think. Possibility, perhaps, of something severe crossing the state. Seemed to be a higher risk in the southern third of the state, last I checked. So we got to be weather aware.
Let's see. As of the latest update from the National Weather Service, there's a swath that passes just south of Tunica and South Haven. So the northwesternmost corner is still yellow. And then another line that runs just south of Natchez all the way across the state to just north of Meridian. So it's the central two-thirds of the Magnolia State is under an enhanced risk.
Ooh. Okay.
Severe storms likely, damaging winds up to 70 miles per hour, and large hail up to golf ball size. Whereas the northwesternmost point of the Magnolia of Mississippi and the southeastern quadrant are under a slight risk.
Okay.
Severe storms possible, damaging winds up to 60 miles an hour, hail up to $50 size. But thankfully, so far, no predictions for any tornadic activity.
Well, that's the main thing. We can deal with a little storminess, but we don't want those dang tornadoes around here, that's for sure. So on the economic front, got to kick you off with that. Had better than expected jobs report today. The U.S. economy adding 170,000 jobs for the month.
Oh, I forgot to mention what time that's going to happen.
Yeah.
Afternoon. It'll be between 1 and 2 o'clock this afternoon to 10 to midnight, depending on where you are, east to west.
Yeah, that's what I saw, too. Sort of two rounds of it, right?
I didn't want people to spend their mornings going, well, when's it coming? It's supposed to be here any minute.
Yeah, that's right. Thanks for that update. So the news on the jobs came in better than expected. And, of course, there was a downward revision to February and March, which is not surprising. It seems like that happens every dead-gum time, doesn't it? There's always some revision that comes after the initial report. So that's good news, and the markets like it as well. And it tends to kind of counteract what was some fear-mongering coming from the Democrats in this country. I mean, is it to the point now where they're like rooting for bad news on the economy and just really economic failure? And I won't say that there's some degree that happens on the Republican side as well. I think the difference is, though, I feel like that we as Republicans, at least, we do criticize. We certainly do here policy. And we talk about the negative impact of those policies and try to distill that down into what does this mean to you. But the fear-mongering is over the top from the left. I mean, didn't I read that yesterday about Hakeem Jeffries saying hospitals will close and people will die? I mean,
and sadly, there are misguided and naive people on this planet and in this country that will believe him.
And that's what bothers me. It's one thing to be critical of policy again and then explain sort of the cause and effect. If this happens, this is likely to be what the results that we would experience would turn out to be. But when you're fear-mongering to the point where, yeah, people will die, that's just outrageous. It's irresponsible, honestly. But it's all in the name, of course, of political expediency. So I think they're upset that the jobs report came in better than expected. What do you think? I really do. I think that there are a lot of them saying, dang, we were really hoping that after Donald Trump's first 3.5 months in office that we were going to get a very bad jobs report. Because with respect to the economy and just the results of the economy, top of the list for Americans, jobs. Even when you're experiencing inflation, if you got a job, you feel better than if you didn't. I mean, not having a job, not having income, not having work, that tops the list. That bests inflation. And I'm not trying to downplay inflation and the cost of living and the problems associated with that and the concerns people have about that and the feeling they have about that. But there's no substitute, I don't believe, from an economics policy perspective and results perspective as is the issue of jobs. And if you think back not so long ago when Barack Obama was president and right before he became president, when we had the financial system meltdown, we had significant job loss leading up to the election. And it was all about unemployment jobs. And that was the focus. Well, unemployment has been relatively stable. It's been kind of a non-issue. You want a job, you can find one. For several years. 15 or so, to be exact. We've kind of been, except for the brief period during COVID, and then we dropped money out of helicopters to offset that. But what we have going on now with this inflation thing, which I think, well, I know, polls show, number one issue, cost of living. Well, now we have reports that indicate that wages, you have to look at real wages. This is something the Biden administration never cared to do. I don't know that Joe Biden even understands it. Real wages, real simply, that's the net of your wage increase and your cost increase. So if your wages go up 5%, but inflation's 10%, well, that increase in your wages was more than consumed by the increase in your expenses. You're in the negative category there. But in this particular case, we've got 3.8% increase in wages over the past year, and inflation comes in at 2.4%. So that's net real wage improvement is what that indicates. And that's good news. And you know the Democrats are hating that. Those that understand it, at least, or care to talk about it. They'd rather tell you that we're shutting down hospitals and people are going to die.
I think they're looking for more digestible sound bites like, yeah, people are going to die, hospitals are going to close down.
Well, that's kind of sad to think that.
That's why they were all about the eggs for so long until they weren't.
That's right. Because that's just red meat, easy to comprehend, rather than real wages. They can say, hey, wages went up. Yeah, but costs went up more. Thus, real wages actually decreased. And this is something they won't touch. They won't talk about. But the news is good. And the Dow is up 413 at this moment. And if you look at job growth, the good news is as well, something you never saw during the Biden administration, that also includes a decrease in public sector jobs, federal public sector jobs. There was actually an uptick in state and local jobs, public sector. But there was a decrease in federal government jobs, mostly because of a lot of the work that DOJ has been doing and cutting out all this craziness. Something that has hit me in the last 24 hours, Rhino, is the word grant. And the reason I'm bringing this up, you saw the news. The president says we're not giving any more deadgum money to PBS and NPR, right? Federal grants. Now, it's a small part. It goes through the public, what the heck's it called? Consolidated Public Broadcasting something or other. There's another agency through which the money flows that makes its way then down to NPR and public broadcasting. But the president said these are biased news organizations, and you'd have to kind of use tongue-in-cheek to describe them as a news organization. We're not going to fund it anymore. Now it accounts for about 15% of their total funding. It's not a lot of money, but still it does make sense. But it just made me think about, why in the world do we have all these grants? First, we're broke. We don't have the money for all these grants.
So-and-so, the congressperson's daughter-in-law needed money.
That's what I'm afraid of. We're coming right back. We've got Representative Sam Creekmore joining us later on the program.
Get ready.
This segment of Middays with Gerard Gibert is brought to you by Covington County Hospital in Collins, where your health matters.
Check it out. Let's do this.
The talk that keeps Mississippi talking. Middays with Gerard Gibert.
Let's get on with it.
On SuperTalk Mississippi.
Okay, so on this economic front, now we need the Congress to get busy and get the dang tax bill passed. It's getting the tax bill passed. It's getting these trade deals worked out, which I'm feeling better about. China continues to deny that they have any interest in working out a trade deal or that there are any discussions underway.
Meanwhile, they're not looking so hot.
Their economy's not doing well. Manufacturing way down in the communist nation, and that's pretty much what they rely on for their well-being, if you could call it that. But we got that, and then we got this deregulatory state going on as well, a push towards that. Come on, Congress, get it done. We need that. I really think that will serve as rocket fuel for the economy. And you look at what also has a chance of being included in the final legislation. I really like the idea of dropping the corporate tax rate for companies that make stuff here. Immediate expensing of all costs associated with building new factories. I think that would be a stimulant for the economy. All good stuff. The Dow at present up 381. The 10-year yield, it's ticking back up again. Your funny money's up just under $100,000 by $2,500. It's made a nice run the last couple of months. So I shared this news this morning when it came out. I'm always all ears anytime we have economic news being released. It's usually 7:30 our time, 8:30 Eastern. And I'm tuned in, like the rest of the economic community is, waiting for the news. And it broke. And it was just shocking when the jobs numbers came in. So I went to social media just to share that without really a lot of political commentary, other than the fact that I really do think the Democrats were rooting for a bad report. and wanted to go back and say, see, we told you. Because it's a gotcha world we live in. And unfortunately, people don't dig beyond the epithelial layer, as we say, just as was the case with the GDP report. We told you, it's a Trump recession. It's coming. See. Except you had to dig into the data, which they're not going to do. And when you looked at it, said, well, wait, we dropped government spending because that is part of the GDP formula. And it's consumption, it's investment, and it's government outlay. Add all that up. And you look below it, say, well, okay, we dropped government spending. Now, it's true that the consumption and the investment, the private sector components were flat, but they weren't down. And there really was nothing instructive. Like, it's not a trend. You couldn't just sink your teeth in that report and say, oh, this is it. This is a trend. We told you. Here it comes. But the other thing, if you dug a little deeper, Rhino, was that corporate investment was up. And when corporations are buying and making capital equipment purchases, that's a pretty dang good indicator. It's almost impossible, honestly. There's no scenario in our history where we've ever had a recession follow a period of strong corporate investment. That's something virtually all economists can agree on. And so that was a key figure that was kind of buried and lost because the left-wing media was so quick to say, recession, we told you, here it comes. And, of course, the president says, not mine, it was Joe Biden's. But the reality is, I don't think we're headed in that direction. But there's a couple of people on my social media that said, well, Republicans, they cheer for bad economic news. Here's Trump in 2007 when he said, I'm excited about a housing market crash, anticipating that was coming. Because this was when he was running his Trump University, and they were advising students to look for some downturns there as an opportunity. So I don't really think that's rooting for policy, because he didn't say anything about policy causing this. There wasn't anything political about that. It was really just saying, we got a bubble going on here. And usually when bubbles burst, those are opportunities for those that, as you know, have the stomach for it, because it's hard. I mean, it takes a special kind of person that sees the knives falling, as they say, to try to catch those knives en route and ride them back up. That's a difficult pill to swallow, and that's all he was saying. But that's not unusual for real estate investors. Very common. You don't want to buy the deadgum real estate when it's rising or at its peak. That's not a good investment, typically. So it's a little different, but that was their example of, you're wrong, the Republicans do it too.
Something I've learned in my over a decade of doing this. The people who feel the most compelled to try to argue on social media, to try to change your mind when you post something on your page, are not the brightest people on the planet. In fact, they tend to be some of the most miserable, ill-conceived, thoughtless, brainless, feckless wastes of space on God's green earth.
The problem is, and you're right, is that the platforms, because of the way data and the written word is presented, they all tend to look sort of nameless, faceless on the same level. And you're right. Once you kind of go behind the curtain, it's not the wizard back there, but they have access to the same tools, and they can create and publicize the information at the same level. And
they're the same level of person that a couple of generations ago they'd have to wear a sandwich board and stand on a street corner screaming about the end is nigh to get the same level of attention they get from being worthless on the internet.
I think a lot of truth to that. But nonetheless, I just think that today's report is good, and it's a little surprising. The markets like it. Now I think let's get the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act reenacted, extended, preferably made permanent, and off to the races we shall go. I don't think there's any question about that. The president, in the meantime, has, in accordance with his responsibility from the executive branch, has provided a budget proposal. That's what their responsibility is. Here's the budget I propose to the Congress, and then the Congress acts on it. And it includes cutting spending by $163 billion in environmental, energy, education, and foreign aid programs. However, those are offset by an increase in defense spending. So really no net decrease in spending, not surprised there. And this would be, by the way, for 2025. The increase in defense spending, first time ever, if this budget were adopted as proposed by the president, first time ever, we'd have a $1 trillion line item in the budget for defense spending. That seems almost surreal to think about, honestly, but that's where we stand. $1 trillion of defense spending, and that is an increase of about $150 billion. So, by the same token, we have cuts to non-defense discretionary spending. So it's basically a wash. And then you've got mandatory spending, which again is on autopilot, and there will be just natural organic increases in Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, debt interest, because we keep adding to the debt. So I think the net is going to be an increase in spending, 26 over 25. However, that doesn't take into account what may happen on the revenue front, especially if we get the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act extended, which I'm hoping is the case and happens sooner rather than later. We're stepping aside for a break in the Element Wealth studio. Once again today, it's Ben Milam from SuperTalk Mississippi News at 11:20. Representative Sam Creekmore will be in the Element Wealth studio at 12:05. He's chairman of Public Health and Human Services in the Mississippi House of Representatives.
Middays with Gerard Gibert.
Welcome to our show.
On SuperTalk Mississippi.
Okay, now you have a good one.
We're back in the Element Wealth studio. So on the C Spire text line, Dean in Tupelo says the Democrats will also try to say that the last 9 months of the Biden presidency helped to create that growth. Of course they will. Was it's some of the increase in the job market in the medical field, but yet people are going to die. Well, I'm not sure what the point is, but yeah, there was job growth in healthcare. That's an industry.
Well, it's pointing out that it refutes Hakeem Jeffries' point.
Oh, I see. I got you. Yeah. Hakeem Jeffries is just eaten up with the fear-mongering. He, of course, the minority leader in the U.S. House. And it's all they know how to do. They really don't have a strategy, a plan, a vision, an approach, a policy platform other than tax the rich and we hate Donald Trump. That's pretty much it. It really is Trump derangement syndrome on steroids.
And there shouldn't be any borders.
Yeah, I guess you could add that to the policy platform as a bullet point. Marion Greenwood, all this fraud they found, or any of these people going to be prosecuted? It's really not so much fraud as it is just wasteful spending. Most of it's perfectly legal. So,
and has been for decades.
Yeah, it's nothing new.
I've mentioned it before, but remember Matthew Lesko, the dude with the question marks all over his suit, like the Riddler?
Yeah, I do.
He sold books every stinking year with a different theme of how you could get free money from the government to pay your bills or pave your driveway or landscape your lawn or buy a boat.
Absolutely. And just promoting their tools that you could buy, you could acquire to.
And it's not even like he was doing hard-hitting, deep-dive research to do that. He was literally just going to the government, getting the guides for the grants, and publishing them.
Yeah, it wasn't anything just earth-shaking, secret, obfuscated information. It was all widely available. He just kind of assembled it all into one central place that you could pay money to find out all these all this various federal dollars that were
and
available.
I'm sure just because of the law of averages, some of those grants were created with pure altruism.
Yeah,
where
sure.
It was a good idea to allocate some money to advance some goal.
Well, I think that's true.
But also the law of averages would state that at least a portion of those were entirely written so that somebody's dog walker's sister-in-law could have a handsome salary.
And somebody felt good about all that, right? I mean, they really did. Look what I'm doing. And that's no doubt about that.
For this one well-connected constituent.
That's absolutely true. But, it goes back to this grant money. I just, every time I see that, the first thing that comes to my mind is, well, where's this money coming from? We don't have any money. So you're literally borrowing money to give to people. That's what it boils down to in the form of grants. Those are just end up being slush funds often. That, unfortunately, Mary points out, what about the fraud? Those slush funds that are getting used that really are totally improper and inappropriate, they're legal. That's the problem. And much of that, as Rhino points out, has been going on for decades without anybody really addressing it.
Is there any wonder why they don't want to go back to regular order? Seemingly neither side.
So now it's being exposed. The sunshine is being applied. And we see what's going on. There's no doubt about that. But we're going to see what happens with respect to this budget and how the Congress handles it. Of course, they're trying to shape a 10-year budget plan. That's what is involved here. That's what's required to extend the tax cuts that are scheduled to expire at the end of the year. And it's just kind of hard to tell where all that lies at this point, other than over and above any changes in the big, beautiful bill that would come in additionally to just extending the tax provisions that are in place today. Hard to tell where that stands. Auto loan interest being deductible. This is one of the things that the president talked about on the campaign trail. If the cars are made in America, both new and used, auto loan interest would be tax deductible. Of course, we talked about manufacturing expensing. 100% expensing for factories. Both the equipment and the structure. That's a little different than 100% expensing that exists today. That's just on capital investment for plant and equipment. Does not include the structure itself and all the costs associated with that. So this would be a shot in the arm to the manufacturing industry for those that build new factories in this country. That's just incredible. That means, you're going to upset the Democrats because these companies are going to not pay any taxes. That's what's going to happen. They're going to go build new factories, and they're going to write that off because if this provision is enacted into law, and like we talked about yesterday, their financial statements is reported for investment purposes to the SEC. Their 10Ks or 10Qs, as they're called. Those are the actual names of the quarterly reports and the annual reports, 10Q, 10K. Those are filed with the various regulatory agencies. They will reflect profit, net income. But for tax purposes, they'll have no profit, perhaps even a loss because of the immediate expensing feature allowed for tax purposes. And they'll go crazy. Look, they made all this money, but they didn't pay any taxes. Right, because they just spent gazillions of dollars on new factories. That's a pretty good deal. You make that kind of investment, hey, no taxes. Or a significant reduction, as the case may be, in your taxes. I'd say that's a pretty dang good deal. Think about the economic impact in terms of jobs and economic activity.
That's where you lost the Democrats.
I know.
You ask them to think.
Well, I'm sorry about that.
Especially past that initial knee-jerk reaction.
Yeah, which is just, look, they made money and didn't pay any taxes. That's all they'll see. They'll
100%
stop.
of what they will focus on.
Man. Just talking to some people, just relate that to our local situation with the big AWS project underway, not far from our position right here. People are telling me that are businesses in the area, all the hotels are full. You see it. All the restaurants are full. They're buying stuff in the stores. Their trailers. You've seen this. It's unbelievable. Because there are a lot of people, that's their lifestyle. They move from job to job to job. They may be at one a year, 2 years, and they move about the country in trailers. So people that are in the business of providing the land and the concrete paths for that, they're experiencing a bonanza. I've also talked to the people involved with the porta-johns. Can you imagine what that's like? So this idea that the Democrats call trickle-down economics, which is actually not a bona fide economic principle, it is true that when somebody comes in, such as an Amazon, says, hey, we're going to spend $20 billion, guess what? There are lots of people that benefit from that. I know we're shocked. I'm told
because there are winners and losers in that equation from the standpoint of winners who provide value to society that get to make some of that money versus losers who just take, gimme. I vote Democrat, gimme. They're upset.
Well, that's misguided and misinformed and disingenuous. And politically motivated. It's an example of the lack of understanding of basic economics and, more importantly, human nature. Because almost everything they support is sort of counter to human nature. Because socialism, Marxism, communism is counter to human nature. That's why you have to put a gun to somebody's head, right? And what you tell us about, you've mentioned a couple of times, have to put safety nets outside the factories because people are trying to escape that sort of oppression. They're willing to kill themselves to get out of it, right? Jump out the window. We're coming right back with the Eagles bumping us out of this segment. Stay with us.
At Cake and
Bring the stories that matter most to Mississippians. Gerard Gibert, Middays with Gerard, SuperTalk Mississippi.
Welcome back, everyone. It's Middays from the Element Wealth Studio. So we shared with you the report from Meta and Microsoft earlier this week. Blowout reports, beat expectations. Yesterday it was Apple and Amazon after the bell. Apple's earnings exceeded expectations, but they wanted more, did investors. Their outlook for the future, driven by tariff uncertainty, was less than just stellar. And the problem is these guys are such a machine that the investment community just expects constant increases and improvements. It's just hard. Tim Cook, CEO, said it's, quote, very difficult to predict beyond June, quote, because I'm not sure what will happen with tariffs. He said that Apple is already sourcing about half of the iPhones for the United States market from India. Most of the products, other than that, are coming from, in the U.S., coming from Vietnam, where tariffs are lower than they are in China. I mean, they still did quite well. They had an astonishing $95 billion of revenue across all product lines. So that's just incredible. And let's see, I'm looking for what their net income was. Hadn't found that yet. But they had an extremely strong quarter. Yeah, $23.6 billion for the quarter. That's a little down from where they have been the last couple of years. If you annualize that, they've been raking in about $115 billion a year, which is slightly more than the $23 billion on a quarterly basis they just had in the last quarter, but still extremely strong. I mean, they'll top $100 billion pretty easily. Amazon, on the other hand, had strong revenue. Came in slightly lower than expected for the cloud services unit, but, man, they're on a run rate of about $600 billion this year. $600 billion. I think they're going to surpass Walmart. They got a real good chance to do that this year as the largest company in terms of revenue in the country. They don't make as much money as these other companies do. About $19 billion of net income for the quarter, of which 12, not surprisingly, came from Amazon Web Services, although it only accounted for about 20% of the company's total revenue. So that's kind of what's going on. Mary says, no fraud, Gerard. People getting welfare, Social Security, and other problems they shouldn't be getting. Well, you're talking about individuals there that shouldn't be, and it's unclear as to whether or not any fraud was actually committed in that particular case. But, yeah, those...
Well, I mean, if you're using someone's Social Security number and that person is supposedly 158 years old, I would think that would be fraud.
That's fraud. The bigger thing that happens is unemployment benefits. That because we all have our Social Security numbers, are all floating around the Internet. Your Social Security number is not private. All of those have been extracted from companies you gave them to as a condition of doing business. Well, everybody... In
fairness, it's believed there's between 10 and 25% that are still not in data brokers' hands.
That's only because there hadn't been a major breach since we've been...
It's because those people were not banked online, did not have any online presence.
No footprint. Yeah. Thus, they didn't have a credit report. Because that's where it started, is the Equifax breach of, 7-8 years ago, which contained the Social Security number of... Now,
it's believed most of those are the elderly and kids. But, yeah. There's a chance your number isn't out there floating around, but you had to have been hiding under a rock for it not to have at this point.
But you're probably, as a result, not looking to commit fraud. Because you don't want to use, I mean, unless you're using somebody else's and yours isn't exposed, but that's not terribly likely. Look, I'm all for
That's what the criminal enterprises from other countries tend to do.
That's where it comes from. A lot of people don't realize that. It's foreigners. So the Social Security numbers, as you know, they get compromised, they get breached, they get extracted, and then they get sold to others who then commit the fraud. And
the crazier estimates of North Korean GDP is that there's at least a percentage point made up of stolen American money.
Oh, I don't doubt that. And a lot of it does come from the Slavic area, Russia, Ukraine. That seems to be where a lot of that sort of cybercrime activity occurs. But, yeah, I'm all for prosecute and marry those people that have engaged in that kind of fraud. It's a small amount of the total dollars we're talking about. Coming right back after Fox News. Hour of Middays with Gerard Gibert is brought to you by the Mississippi Business Journal. Visit msbusinessjournal.com. Scott Coopwood, publisher and president.
Welcome to the show that challenges you to think deeply and look beyond political posturing. You're listening to Middays with Gerard Gibert here on SuperTalk Mississippi.
We are back in the Element Wealth studio. Thanks so much for joining us on this
Friday, y'all.
All right. Are you thinking about or planning for a retirement? Do you have a plan? Go to myelementwealth.com or call 601-957-6006 to let Element Wealth help you find your balance between income growth and guarantees. The C Spire text line, that would be 601-879-4395. Today on In a Mississippi Minute with Steve Azar, you'll hear an interview with Mississippi singer Jimmy Lee Jr. In a Mississippi Minute with Steve Azar is presented by Superior Catfish. Remember, there's catfish, then there is Superior Catfish. It's U.S. farm-raised catfish with homegrown flavor. Ask for it by name at your favorite store or restaurant. Go to superiorcatfish.com for more info. So one of the things I was going to just backing up on here, Mary talking about from Greenwood, fraud in the Social Security program and other federal assistance programs. The fraud in Social Security, for the most part, it is done through the disability aspect of the program. So there's disability benefits available through Social Security. And that's because, as you know, every now and then my head hurts. Okay, here's your check, right? I mean, that's the problem there.
For some, and then you have others that have actual needs that they have to jump through hoops.
That's true. And that shouldn't be the case. It is designed to be a safety net for those who are legitimately disabled. Bona fide disabled. The problem is we just rush that stuff through. There really aren't proper checks, and that's a problem. And then, of course, there's an income test as well, and that's the same for like the TANF program, temporary assistance for needy families, SNAP benefits, the so-called food stamps, housing assistance is another program. All of those are based on household income, and that's just not easily or accurately verified. And that's one of the big problems. We don't have enough people, honestly, to run around the landscape of the country to ensure that the household income that's reported by the applicant is accurate, because it's not their individual income, it's the household income. And what you don't know is, well, how many people live in the dang house that are receiving and producing income? You see this in Medicaid all the time, right? To try to manipulate who lives with who and who's making enough money to stay inside the Medicaid program. So you've seen, for example, the auditor has reported that cases of Medicaid fraud here in this state, where people are living in, at least one was living in $1 million home. I think in Madison County, if I'm not mistaken. Well, and that's because when they show up and they apply and they say, oh, yeah, I live by myself, here's my tax return, they qualify for the benefits, but it turns out they live in a house with somebody who's receiving income that would disqualify them for benefits. And it's just not a situation where for every single applicant, someone's dispatched to see, okay, who lives in here? It's supposed to be tied together based on addresses in their tax returns, but those systems are not as good as they should be, and they're not as integrated as they should be.
And that's where you once again run into the that's not my problem.
Exactly. And this is why, in my view, the only way to get control and to address and effectively eliminate all this manipulation is through automation. Only technology. We can't hire enough people, and by the time we hire enough people to go verify, well, heck, we're upside down. We're not saving any money. And people they're still subject to making mistakes. So what we've got to do is vastly improve the automated systems and the integration. And that's one of the things that Elon Musk and the Doge team have pointed out. Yeah, this system doesn't talk to that system, or this system relies on this one, and that's not right. So the Social Security system, for example, where we got all these people that are dead, it's not that they're getting Social Security benefits. That really was not uncovered or identified. It's that Social Security number is used to qualify for other benefits without proper determination that, hey, you really wouldn't be upside if you were 140 years old, as the system says you are. So that's where the fraud occurs. It's in the other programs that are, again, rely on the Social Security data for eligibility. So we desperately need modernization of all of these information technology systems to address this issue. Only through doing so will we address this issue of fraud and waste and abuse. And that's one of the things that I think just astonished the Doge team, because they're accustomed to the most sophisticated, the most powerful, the most functional IT systems running the enterprises that Elon Musk does. They couldn't produce what they do without those underlying systems. But not our government. We're still using 40-year-old systems that aren't well integrated. And the other thing that's happened, as you know, through the years is the schemes that people dream up. Once they figure out, hey, you know what, if you just do this, and this, you can get through it, right? Like the guy you were talking about, the Riddler guy with the question marks, he's just figured out. And in his case, it was legal. But it exposed kind of and shined the light on, wait, we actually do that? So like all the USA AID stuff, that wasn't really so much fraud as it was just stupid money for stupid purposes. Because these grants just end up being these dumb slush funds. Here's money for you to go do something good for other countries that truly need it. Next thing you know, drag queens in Ecuador and transgender Sesame Street stuff in Iran or whatever the hell it was. That's like, what? So just common sense prevailed here. And I think that's the good news. And so I'm pleased to see the president's budget strip $160 billion out of non-defense discretionary spending. Right, the Democrats are going to go nuts over this because the historical battle, and I'm laying a little bit of blame on both parties here, on the discretionary spending, which is what's appropriated by the Congress. The mandatory's not. Republicans generally want more money for defense. Democrats want less money for defense and more money for everything else that's outside of defense. And that includes stuff like USAID and foreign aid and education and climate and all this other junk that they want. So now we got a situation where Republicans are in control. They're saying, okay, more money for defense. That's the president's desire. He's made that clear. Wants more ships and the Golden Dome and some of this other stuff, these other assets. That costs money. But the Democrats, here comes the fear-mongering. Oh, my gosh, every school in America is going to close if we cut out this small dab of money, relatively speaking.
I guess it's a good thing that, in large part, their mouthpiece, the mainstream media, has been defanged, and a larger percentage of Americans than ever before distrust mainstream media.
That's exactly right. And, you know, it would help if they would tell the truth and be honest and objective. This conversation we're having right here, for example. But they won't do it. They tend to lean into the fear-mongering.
They physically can't.
I think that's right. I think they break out, have a nervous breakdown because it suits their political wishes. And that's all they really care about.
And their own personal goals.
And
because
that's
they
right.
know if they tell a believable enough lie that makes a big enough splash, they get a bigger gig that pays a bigger paycheck with more attention.
That's true. There's a lot of money in that. It really
doesn't matter if the lie is proven false later down the road. You got your gig already, and nobody's paying attention to 2 weeks ago's news.
That's sad but true. It absolutely is sad but true. I think
you really only come tumbling down due to lies when you get to the tippy top. Right, Dan Rather?
Yeah. He kind of set us off on that. There's no doubt about it. Well, I don't know. I just like to see a return to the objective truth. That's what is so desperately needed in this country. I'm talking about from the media specifically. Jason in Starkville says China also recently put nets up in one of the malls because of people jumping. Oh, my gosh. Yeah, we have people in this country that want to turn us more into what China is. And that's what you get. Having to put nets up outside of shopping malls so people don't kill themselves because it's so bad.
Those people are dumb.
That's true. Ben Milam, Multimedia Journalist, SuperTalk Mississippi News, is next.
The talk that keeps Mississippi talking.
We're rolling. Hit it. Go. Play it.
Middays with Gerard Gibert on SuperTalk Mississippi.
Wild thing, I think I love you.
Welcome back, everyone. It's Middays from the Element Wealth Studio. Up now, it's Ben Milam, Super Talk Mississippi News.
I love that music. It gets me going. Happy Friday, Gerard. How are you?
What's going on there, Big Ben?
Oh, plenty. Another long week, another jam-packed news week.
It sure was. What do you got for us today?
Well, I want to start. I got a couple of baseball stories, and one of, if not the biggest story outside of maybe one or two others, was a change at the head coaching position for Mississippi State baseball. Head coach Chris Lemonis. I would imagine if you got your finger on the pulse at all of college sports in Mississippi, you have heard of this, but we're going to talk about it anyways. Head coach Chris Lemonis for Mississippi State. They parted ways with him with 3 weeks left in the regular season. And part of what I want to talk about, and I think the conversation surrounding this has been really interesting to me. It sparked, I think a very split public opinion in that a lot of the, especially national writers and people that, are not Mississippi State fans, are either in the journalism media side of things or coaches from outside the state, what have you, were a little incensed that Lemonis was let go 3 weeks before the end of the regular season. Now, the Bulldogs not having a great year. They're in danger of missing the postseason for the third time in 4 years. But that is since 2021, which, of course, is when Mississippi State won the national championship, their first in school history. And a lot of people are saying, again, mostly I think on the outside, non-Mississippi people and media people are saying that he should have been given, these last 3 weeks. He earned it. He won a national championship. And so I actually wanted to kind of pose that question to you as, I know you're a baseball guy. We're both baseball guys. And I can kind of see both sides of it, right? Because, it is a high-level program. It's, just a storied, long string of success for this program. But, kind of the feather in the cap is that national championship in 2021. But then you've had this rough stretch in the 4 years following. I don't know. I don't really know how to feel about it. Do you feel like maybe they should have given him the last 3 weeks? I mean, it's 3 weeks. How much is that really going to help you in terms of your coaching search? I don't know.
Yeah, of course, it's a what have you done for me lately world, and it applies to college athletics just like it does in business and politics and everything else. Especially us. So, I mean, people are always quick to forget something good that may have happened in recent memory, and they're looking for the next, big celebration.
That's right.
The timing of it in the remaining 3 weeks, it's just hard to tell, Ben. What may have been happening behind closed doors between the athletic department, the athletic director, and Coach Lamonis. Mm-hmm. And I agree. I've heard fans come down on both sides of that issue. That feel strongly one way or another. But I suspect there's more to the story that we probably don't know. I mean, it seems like you could have made that change after the season, but who knows?
Yeah, and that is, I think that's a great point. There is always going to be stuff that the general public is not privy to, especially in college athletics, I think, when there are so many factors to consider, and you have to think about the next coach, and maybe they have somebody in mind that it would make it more possible or more likely to hire them if they move more quickly. So you just never know. The money's a big part of it too, obviously. But whatever all the factors were, athletic director Zach Selman decided it was the right time to move on. The pitching coach, Justin Parker, will be the interim head coach, and in his first game as the interim head man, Bulldogs won big in midweek action. They will go back to SEC play this weekend against Kentucky. Super Bulldog weekend for you Mississippi State fans, big weekend. And I would imagine, that's part of the argument too, is it kind of injects some new hope and some new energy into the program. Because it's really not out of the realm of possibility that Mississippi State gets on a run here in the last 3 weeks and finds themselves in at least a much better position to make the NCAA tournament.
Good.
So, it's possible. And the other baseball story I wanted to mention, I'm going to try to not make this a fully baseball segment, but this is definitely worth mentioning. We had baseball history made in Mississippi last night. William Cary's Bobby Halford passed Ron Polk to become the winningest baseball coach in Mississippi history, and that is
incredible.
That is certainly saying something. He got win number 1,374, passing Polk's 1,373, and that includes all of Polk's stops as a head coach. Twice at Mississippi State. He was at Georgia for a very short stint, and at Georgia Southern for 3 years as well. And I think one of the really cool things about what Coach Halford has done in Hattiesburg, he has been there for 40 years. He has never been in any other program. He has just won, and he has continued to win year after year. And the Crusaders back in that spot again. They're going to host a regional to begin NCAA or NAIA tournament play next week, and going to try to make a run at a second straight World Series. That would be number 6 in Halford's career. So
what a run.
Really, really, really cool.
Man, quite the success right there under our nose at William Carey.
Sure,
I mean, a baseball powerhouse.
Yeah, and it's a long list, too. I would encourage people to go read more at supertalk.fm. As always, there's a lot of accomplishments and superlatives that we don't have time to completely cover here, but I would point people there. But plenty else happening outside of baseball as well, Gerard.
This Bonnie Carey spillway deal, that just seems like a monster that won't go away.
Yeah, it does. And that's, of course, the previous opening of the Bonnie Carey spillway. And so just some short background. And Caleb Sailors has done some excellent work on this, covering this for the last couple of years. As you mentioned, it's kind of an ongoing thing. But it was previously opened the last time there were real flooding concerns. This was in don't quote me on this. This is, I believe, 2020. And if I could find the year, I guess it really, in 2019 was when it was last opened, February 27th of 2019. And this, the point of opening it is to alleviate flooding on the Mississippi River in the New Orleans area. It's where it's in Laplace, Louisiana, in the New Orleans area, and it's to alleviate flooding and mitigate risk for flooding. But the problem is it dumps all this fresh water into the saltwater Mississippi Sound, which completely decimated the marine life in the Mississippi Sound and surrounding areas as well. Killed more than 90% of oyster life in Mississippi Harvest Reef. Shrimp landings were reduced by 50%, and that was already, and continues to be an industry that has struggled in the Deep South and in Mississippi in particular. And so there were these massive lawsuits, and those have been settled, and payments for those are continuing to roll out. And so as the Mississippi River has risen as of late, the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers has toyed with the idea of opening it again. And, of course, Lieutenant Governor Delbert Hosemann publicly threatened legal action if that were to happen. And so I think there was a lot of fear that we were going to have this again, the same thing that happened in 2019 and the lingering effects of that. But the good news is the river levels of the Mississippi River, they look to be headed towards lowering and no longer rising. And so the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers does not think they're going to have to open the Bonnie Carey spillway. And even if those forecasts are not quite correct, I think they have pointed to some things like dredging and some other things that will mitigate those flooding concerns outside of opening the Bonnie Carey spillway, which, again, these industries and just the marine life in general are just now starting to come around after that sequence of events that began in 2019. So really, really good news there. Yeah, and it's not good for our seafood industry, of course. It's had a significant negative economic impact on that. So hopefully we can get that squared away and get some resolution there. Just don't like to see that contention. Okay, so Grenada County, a new industrial park. This is something the governor has really been promoting, the need to make some investment in these sites. Yeah, every week it feels like, Gerard, we have a new big economic development story to tell you. This will be an estimated $4 billion direct impact on the economy in Grenada County. It'll create up to 2,500 jobs and hopefully attract some new big investments in the state. And then the voter registration deadline, when is that? Yeah, that's coming up. That will be on Monday, May 5th. So if you've not registered for the upcoming municipal general elections all across Mississippi, Monday, May 5th. If you want further details, go to supertalk.fm. Sounds great. Great report there, Ben. Thanks for coming in. Yes, sir. Appreciate you, Gerard. Ben Milam, Multimedia Journalist, SuperTalk Mississippi News, has been our guest. We're stepping aside for a break. At 11:05 today, it's Representative Sam Creekmore.
Okay, is everybody ready?
I'm ready. Ready here.
Middays with Gerard Gibert on Super Talk Mississippi.
Shot through the heart, and you're too late, darling. You give love a bad name.
We do have one correction we need to make to your tease.
Okay.
For either that was your way of telling me you've invented time travel, which was awesome. I'm excited.
Okay.
Or you signed me up to be here longer than I expected, and I didn't sign up for it because you said that the representative's going to be with us at 11:05.
Yeah, my bad. I just realized that.
So we don't have time travel?
No, sorry.
Well, that would be the good news. The bad news would be if you meant 11:05 p.m. and it's like, wait, this is going to be a long show.
I apologize for that. 12:05.
It's
I'm
Friday.
sorry.
I was hoping for the time travel though.
Yeah. I'm sorry to disappoint you. Back to reality. The representative is coming in at 12:05. My apologies, and my apologies to the audience. I got to tell you, I normally, just so the audience will know, we get our lineup the night before from our content director, and sometimes that comes in often after hours because it takes that long. She's often working, is Alex, after hours, just working through reschedules and cancellations or confirmations. You taught me something yesterday. I was on Newsmax, and I got the, as is customary, a couple hours before my appearance, they'll send me the Zoom link and then the topics that they want to discuss and tell me who I'm on with, the show, and then if there are other guests that will be on at the same time. So there was something that I'd never seen before. They listed all that, except one of the guests was listed as an F-14 guest. And I said, what the heck is that? I figured you may know some broadcasting term.
Yeah, it's kind of obscure lingo, but really it just comes down to that's somebody we hope to have on.
Okay.
But it's more than a potential guest, because a potential guest is someone you may or may not have reached out to yet. An efforting guest is you're just waiting on confirmation for them to be there. Okay.
And they're just giving you a heads up that this is who we... And it turned out that person was available. And it was interesting. It was an ex-FBI agent that's written a book. And the discussion was about something we had just talked about on the show. And it was the main teacher. Remember yesterday? That was the topic. That and the other person who's a transgender who was out destroying and vandalizing Tesla vehicles, and the judge let them out, said, we couldn't incarcerate them and hold them in jail because they'd missed their transgender, their gender-affirming care is what it's called. Their sex change mutilation is what it really is. So that we discussed that, and he, from an FBI perspective, it made sense to me, said, these people who engage in crime, to Mary from Greenwood's point, if you legitimately commit fraud, that's stealing, and that is a felony, and you absolutely should be hunted down and pay the consequences. I completely agree with that. And in this case, it was this person who this judge saw fit not to hold, even though they clearly it was empirical evidence they had engaged in property damage. But because this person, how do you not conclude that it was politically motivated? I know the Democrats would, and I think we even had somebody on the C-Spire text line that jumped on me about that. Like, oh no, it had nothing to do with that or something to that effect. Like, well, what are you supposed to think? It just looks to me like that they're receiving deference from the judicial system and some sort of preferential treatment. Now, what if this person who had engaged in some sort of property crime, destruction of assets, had a MAGA hat on? What do you think the chances are that judge would not have held them in jail? That's the point. It's a double standard. We got to return to the days of blind justice. That's where we should be. And I think that's what most Americans want to see happen and expect out of our judicial system, our legal system. So you had that, and then you had this main teacher who I guess it's not a crime, but I think it is, right? We talked about that yesterday. When you're out threatening the lives, calling for the murder of the president and other people, I thought that was a crime. And if it is, then you should be arrested, you should be convicted, and you should suffer the proper punishment. And the fact that we have activist judges that tend to consider the political profile of people who come before them, where they're supposed to be rendering impartial, unbiased judgment, that's a problem in this country. And we're seeing it play out firsthand with all these loon judges that are striking down the president's various orders. Now, if the orders are truly unconstitutional and illegal, I'm for that. But I don't get that out of these judges. I get the sense that, no, it's because it's Donald Trump, we're going to have to treat it this way. But if this were Joe Biden, we'd treat it that way. And that's the problem. At that point, you've compromised your integrity and your impartiality, which is what we expect from the bench. In fact, you can't have a functioning society without that. That's one of the things that historically has differentiated this country from all the others, because they are just banana republics that, oh, this is so-and-so. Okay, well, yeah, it's okay that they did that.
It's even what differentiates us from arguably the inspiration for our justice system, the British justice system.
Yeah.
Because in England, you've got an attorney and there's a prosecutor, but the judges are the ones really conducting the trial. They're the ones asking questions, trying to get evidence, trying to get information. And because of that, historically, politics have come before personal rights.
And that is not the way to run the railroad, and nothing but bad stuff happens when you start dispensing justice that way. And so that's what the discussion was about. So I apologize, though, no time traveling. I misspoke when I said that the Representative Sam Creekmore would join us at 11:05. It's 12:05. But I was going to say that
I wasn't going to do anything too crazy. I was just going to go back and get about $100 worth of Bitcoin.
That's right. That would be a good play today.
Back when it was a couple pennies a piece.
It's my custom to print the lineup. I like to have it on paper in front of me just to make sure in case there's any question. And that's what I use while I'm in the studio. But today I printed it. I typically print it at my house, place it in my vehicle, and then I'll stick it in my laptop case before I come in. Well, I got out of my car this morning and forgot it. I've been known to do that before, and so I didn't have it in front of me, and I misspoke and didn't realize what time it was. So I apologize for that. They all start to run together after a while as well. But, yeah, Representative Sam Creekmore coming on a little bit. Ben from Madison, by the way. The governor had a very interesting summit yesterday, Rhino, called the Power Up Mississippi Summit. And this is an initiative the governor launched. I think this is awesome. It making Mississippi a leader in producing energy and really ensuring that our state has all of the regulations and resources available in a conducive way to produce more energy. And our state, as we've talked about so many times before, that's like the new currency in economic development. There ain't no doubt about it. He who's got the power is going to win the deals, and that's going to secure these big projects. That was pivotal in the giant Amazon Web Services investment when Entergy was able to step up and say, yeah, we can do that, meet their energy requirements, and that's necessitating a $2.5 billion investment on the part of Entergy that often gets overlooked as part of this total project, increasing both generation and transmission as far as that $2.5 billion investment. But Ben says the governor must be listening to Middays. Really happy to hear him fully embrace nuclear energy and increase in natural gas production yesterday at his energy summit. And so it is absolutely true that he announced that we're an all the above energy state. We're embracing all forms. You and I have said that many, many, many times. The Democrats want you to just rely on a sliver of that matrix, mistakenly, foolishly thinking, oh, yeah, we can just power the whole thing with solar and wind and renewable sources. That's their goal, their dream. And I think clear-thinking people know better than that. That's just not practical. It's not viable.
Well, you got to remember, these are the same people that think hashtags will stop terrorists.
That's right. I forgot about that. But I agree, Ben. I think it was welcome, good news that our governor supports all forms of energy, including nuclear. And how many times you and I have talked about that's the key to our energy future, no doubt. We're stepping aside for a break right now with Fox News Super Talk News. Then Representative Creekmore in 50.
Poly Up Middays with Gerard.
Good for America. Good for fans of justice and truth. Good for us.
Super Talk Mississippi.
This is what we stand for.
South to the land of the pines, I'm thumbing my way into North Carolina, staring up the road and pray to God I see headlights. I made it down the coast in 17 hours, picking me a food.
We're back with you in the Element Well studio, final segment of hour 2. Okay, I got it this time. Let's see. Mo says Democrats are against companies making money if they are not getting a piece of the pie. It's fine if they get their cut. Kamala stands in solidarity with elephants and porta potties, says CC in Senatobia. She did make an appearance, and the word salad continued.
And they charge people good money to go see that.
25 grand?
Yeah, something like that.
That's what I thought, man. Unbelievable. Lamonis should have
saying about a fool and his money are easily parted.
That's right. I guess they're still in love with her. We were talking to Ben Milam with Super Talk Mississippi News about the termination of baseball coach at Mississippi State, Chris Lamonis. This on the C Spire text line. Lamonis should have been fired before now. Move on. Old news. Let's see. The Bonnie Carey Spillway, this was just sent in on the C Spire text line, will not need to be open. The Mississippi River is going to crest below projections and sooner in New Orleans, and therefore the Bonnie Carey Spillway opening won't happen this high water round. Great news for southeast Louisiana and southwest Mississippi, especially fisheries and tourism. That was, I can't make out the name of the person, Todd Terrell. This was shared.
Yeah, that's what Ben reported.
Okay, gotcha. So just wanted to confirm on that. I know that has been stressful, to say the least. That's who they get to lead all the protests on the C Spire text line. I think we're talking about some of these loony people. We won't see blind justice again until these activist judges are removed, says Jeff from Loosedale. Sure feels like it. Jason in Starkville said if we could turn time back, you might want to buy a little Bitcoin or a couple of lottery tickets or big boy tickets, maybe a little of both, he says. Sure. Going to name all my AR-15s, MS-13s. That way the Democrats don't want them, says Mike from Madison. I can see Lamona's house from the job I'm on right now, says Jason in Starkville. Thanks for reporting that. Yeah, so, you hate to see anybody lose their job like that, but this is what they signed up for. They understand just how touchy those jobs are and how sensitive they are and how, you got to produce. And you got to produce year in and year out. And when you're faltering, and that's your bosses and the fan base start feeling like it, and if it starts affecting the program financially, that's even a bigger problem. Yeah, there's going to be a change made. But they signed up for it. They know it. That's also why they're highly compensated. Because they know they take that risk. You think about all the people on that campus, those are the easiest ones to fire, are they not?
For the most part, yeah.
You could argue that. You start talking about firing instructors and
There's
administrators.
Probably somebody in the physical plant or a cafeteria worker or something that would likely have less protections than the coaches. But, from the academic side, it can get pretty tough to get rid of some of those folks.
And please understand me, I'm not picking on or singling out Mississippi State. I'm talking about the academic community in general.
Oh, yeah, man, it's academia all over.
Yeah. So, but I know some people say, well, look at all that money they make for doing that job. Yeah. First, special talent skills, right, to coach at that level. Second, you know you can be gone at the drop of a hat. Literally. For no reason whatsoever.
Most coaches have a
bit
of a golden parachute if they do get let go.
They do.
Unless it was something they broke a contract for.
But I would argue if they get hired at that level, that means that they've got some track record, some qualifications, and so that's just what comes with the territory. I'm just saying it's like big boy employment, right? And I think it's great. I think it is a great example of at will. We don't like you for any reason whatsoever. You're gone. We don't have to justify it. We don't have to explain it. We don't have to have a file written up. We don't have to have 14 people review it.
And we don't have to check with Uncle Sam and make sure it's okay.
Right. That's the point I'm making. That's the way it should be. At-will employment. Everywhere. I don't care if it's public or private sector. You tend to perform a little better when you know that your rear's on the line every day.
You have less of the not my problem.
That's a good point. We could solve the not my problem if there were a little fear and a little threat. And I know it's totally unrelated. It's one of the reasons that I support school choice, to improve the public schools and put a little pressure their way. We're stepping aside now for Fox News, SuperTalk News, then Representative Sam Creekmore.
Get ready to go beyond the headlines and join a meaningful conversation with people from around the state. You're listening to Middays with Gerard Gibert here on SuperTalk Mississippi.
Welcome back, everyone. It's Hour 3, the afternoon portion of Middays. We're once again live from the Element Wealth studio on this
Friday, y'all.
We welcome now Sam Creekmore. He's a member of the Mississippi House of Representatives, serves at District 14. He's chairman of the Public Health and Human Services Committee. Chairman Creekmore, always good to see you, sir. Thanks for coming in.
Likewise. I always enjoy being in the studio, especially when Rano's got some good music playing.
Absolutely. All right, so we're kind of in a limbo period right now. We died, I guess, the regular session, and now we're awaiting the governor to call a special session because we didn't get a budget done, and so that's pending, I guess we should say, for fiscal year 26. You hearing anything from leadership there?
You know, I hear rumors, but nothing from leadership, not to me anyway. I know people are in the building working on that. Not me, but I worked on healthcare stuff and not on the budget this week. So hopefully they're getting closer.
The agencies are getting a little antsy, aren't they?
They are. I've heard from several.
I'm sure. Well, I don't really know what to expect. I mean, it's really hard to dig into it. We could speculate all kind of stuff. Are we going to just focus on the budget? Might we add some other topics to the agenda? Don't know.
Yeah, I hope we do add.
Okay.
As you know, the governor vetoed a very important big bill that we had in public health, the Certificate of Need bill.
Yeah.
So, and I've called his staff and asked them to add that to the call. So hopefully they will.
And his objection was over just one provision that I guess he thought was kind of a carve-out, right?
Right, it was. It was added on the Senate floor and in the last day. And I didn't disagree with it, but it was something we could have done without and got this more comprehensive CON bill passed without it.
He's always been, to my knowledge, I think he's made it publicly known, a proponent of full repeal of our CON statutes.
Absolutely. I think the last time we were here, I probably didn't do a very good job of describing what CON is.
Yeah.
And, you know, it was created in 1974, and the federal government put it required all states to have CON, certificate of need, and otherwise you wouldn't get health care funding. And the federal government does that at time to time. But the purpose was to control health care costs and prevent any unnecessary duplication of health care services. Well, in 1986, the Reagan administration, they lifted that mandate for CON, which since then 35 states have remained in, and Mississippi is one of those 35, and we probably have the most complicated and far-reaching CON law in the United States right now. Yeah. So many services. To build a hospital, if you want to buy medical equipment over $1.5 million, you have to get a certificate of need, and that's administered by the Department of Health. It costs money to do it. So since 2020, 2019, the legislature's been trying hard to revamp these CON laws and make it more better for business and hospitals and healthcare, and
hopefully expand the supply.
Expand the supply.
Something desperately needed in our state.
Absolutely,
and it's a big hindrance. These CON laws are an impediment.
That's right. Yeah, if you wanted to, you're a big hospital and you wanted to remodel your lobby, and it went over a certain construction cost, you had to apply for a CON.
That's crazy.
That's crazy.
Even parking lots.
Parking lots. Yeah. That's right. And the other part of it, and I think you would agree, it slows innovation in healthcare when you have a protected healthcare system that nobody else can compete with you. You're not constantly seeking to. You may be constantly looking to save money or make money, but innovation kind of suffers from that. So this would help, I believe, in innovation in the state of Mississippi, and we need that.
Yeah. What are the objections you hear? So it seems like that Senator Bryan, of course, your counterpart in the Senate, a Democrat, he's not a big proponent of really much change to our current CON infrastructure there.
He's not, and I would define it more as he's very careful. And he, of course, has way more experience than me or most people in the legislature, especially in healthcare. He's done this before.
A while, yeah.
So we sent a bill over from the House. It was pretty aggressive in CON reform. Of course, I talked to Senator Bryan well before the bill ever passed the House and told him it was coming, and here's what it did. And he doesn't say much. Well, they refined it on the Senate side, and where it really still was a very good bill, and that's where they added that language that the governor didn't like. But what we did, and the biggest thing is increase the capital expenditures. For instance, we were talking about the parking lot or the lobby area. We increased the medical equipment expenditure from $1.5 to $3 million. So you can spend up to $3 million without having to apply for a CON. For clinical services, it was $5 million. We doubled that to $10 million. So if you wanted to add a service and it costs less than $10 million, you could do that without receiving a CON. And then everything else falls under the category non-clinical, and that's the parking lot and the lobby or gift shop. That was $10 million. Now it's $20 in that bill. Okay. And so that's what we sent to the governor. We also, and I thought this was an important piece, especially for downtown Jackson, the University Medical Center, UMMC, they have a teacher exemption in CON, so they don't have to apply for CON for any of their properties across the state of Mississippi. We limited that exemption to just the downtown area. Therefore, if they wanted to add something new and didn't want to require CON, it would force them to keep it in the downtown metro area of Jackson.
And that's been something that those that don't have similar exemptions that are in the hospital healthcare business, they have complained about.
They have, because
it's understandable.
It is. It is. If you got a hospital that's having to get CON for services, and you got one a mile down the road that doesn't, it's. And they're competing, so we try to level the playing field. Yeah,
and I think that's in the best interest of consumers.
I do too.
Of patients as well.
And the UMMC they were gracious about it and worked with us on the map, and wasn't a lot of pushback.
Okay,
but nobody. Make this clear. Nobody who has a CON wants to come out of CON because,
of course,
they're protected. But They didn't. They were very gracious.
Okay. Well, so do you think at this point it'd be purely a guess, unless you've heard something more concrete, that the governor would add that to the agenda? Because it sounds like a small change. We get this done.
That's right, and the capital expenditure part would help the rural hospitals now,
big time.
And yes, I think it'll get added, and I'll tell you why.
Okay.
You know, I had 2 bills that he vetoed this session. One was a Main Street bill, and then he explains why he vetoes it, and doesn't always give a roadmap to getting around the veto. The Main Street bill, he called it a duckbill platypus bill, and just didn't like it. But this bill he did. He said, "Here's what I don't like about it and why." And
he did. He was very explicit,
and even brought it up in the press conference. You know, I may add CON to the call where we can get some real CON reform in Mississippi. So I'm encouraged.
Well, and I know you focus, of course, due to your chairmanship on health care, but I've actually said on the show, and the speaker was on as a guest on another show and repeated it, is that, you know, we're all about free markets in Mississippi, except when it comes to health care and education and alcohol and sports betting and vehicle sales. Yeah. Other than that, we're...
That's right. That's right.
So we have a president that's very anti-protectionist in terms of domestically. Now he protects the country from outsiders.
He does.
You know, he favors those policies to do that. But hopefully we can get something done here. I know you've been working hard on this. And a lot of people have.
And absolutely, it's not just me. And Hank Zuber's been incredibly good with this. But again, if we can get this passed, there's still more and more we'd like to keep chipping away at to help healthcare in Mississippi.
Didn't we have a run at psychiatric care yesterday?
Psychiatric care, dialysis. Yeah. And so all that is now going to the State Board of Health for a official study.
Okay.
And so that's the results of that study are due by December 1st, which would give us time to react in the 2026 legislative session.
What's sort of ironic and really just counter to common sense and logic, you know about the history, you talked about it. The idea was we got to keep costs down by limiting supply, right?
That's right. That's right.
That was the premise.
And ironically, we had the lowest healthcare costs in the country in Mississippi.
Yeah. I know. So we need to get this done. We got Sam Creekmore. He is a member of the Mississippi House of Representatives, chairs the Public Health Committee in the House. We're coming right back. Stay with us.
Hey, this is Bob. And
we interrupt this program.
Gerard Gibert.
Here we go.
This is huge news. Huge news. You need to listen to this.
Middays with Gerard. SuperTalk, Mississippi.
A Monday warrior, mean stride. Today's Tom Sawyer, mean pride.
Welcome back, everyone. We're still visiting with Sam Creekmore. He represents District 14 in the Mississippi House of Representatives. So, Representative Creekmore, is that just Union County, by the way?
It is. And it's not all of Union County.
Okay.
Yeah. Steve Massengill, that's part of it.
Yeah. Okay. Awesome. And serves as the chair of Public Health and Human Services. We were just talking about an attempt, at least, to do some partial repeal of these rather old CON statutes. I mean, they've been reformed through the years, but the bottom line is there's certain things if a healthcare provider wants to do, whether it's expanding spaces in their parking lot, or like you said, remodeling their lobby. And then adding beds, of course, that's a huge deal. Buying certain equipment. They got to, Mother May I get permission from the state government. That's the bottom line.
That's it. And pay a lawyer to do it. So, I mean, it just
a bunch of money and time.
That's right.
That's an involved application. That's not something you just snap your fingers and send it an email real quick.
If you're a neighboring medical provider and you don't like the CON that they're applying for, you can object to it, and there's an appeal process, and you could be sitting out there for 2 years.
Don't we have enough of that in our government? We got all these boards and stuff and you know this, and you want to set up shop in a certain industry, you often have to go in front of a board that would be your competition, and they have to approve you doing that. Yeah. We need some work there.
We do,
and
we're going to get it.
Yeah, and I know the governor feels that way. You know, he'd like to perhaps reduce those number of boards. Heck, I don't know how they keep up with all that. I know he's got full-time staff. That's all they do is just deal with all the boards and the appointments because there's so many of them.
Yeah.
I mean, some of those are necessary, some of those are over the top. We'll see what happens. The big legislation, of course, that if you want to talk about it, that is sparked lots of controversy, was the tax reform package. And the way that went down was, shall we say, unusual at best.
Very unusual. And on the House side, obviously, we've been wanting full income tax removal since Speaker Gunn was here.
Sure.
And it passed it. And it to me, it was obvious that the Senate was not on board on a plan to eliminate full income tax. And I get both sides. And I think the rub now, and which has caused this special session, is there's that project money that the House has been strongly in favor of. We've had it every year. But I feel like the Senate and maybe their leadership thinks that money needs to set as a reserve.
Explain that to the audience, what you mean by project money.
Well, at the end of every session, their legislators, senators, and House members send in lists for projects for maybe a road for their county or a new bridge for the city or a park. And the leadership prioritizes that and then will award not all, but most legislatures with some money to take back home.
Yeah.
And it's important I know it's important to my Union County and New Albany, and just like it is everybody else. And the Senate or their leadership wants to just set aside that money for this year and not have any project money. And I understand that 100%, especially with the uncertainty of elimination of income tax. Mm-hmm. However, our models show that we should experience growth, and we're not completely eliminating income tax by any means come July 1.
Yeah, not yet. That's absolutely true. Yeah. But it is true, I think you'd have to agree, that we are going to see declining, we already are, revenues from income taxes. We're seeing that just because of the legislation passed in 22.
That's right.
And we reduced the rate, got rid of the 4%, and then we're trimming the remaining 5% down to 4%. Mm-hmm. It will hit 4% for the calendar year 2026, and then after that, we're going down to 3% in accordance with the legislation passed in this session, and then over a period of time down to 0. And we will transition to being relying fully on revenue collected from sales taxes at that point, for the most part.
Yeah, absolutely. And we're hoping with this income tax reduction will be a lot more growth.
It's going to require that.
It's going to have it.
To make ends meet.
That's right.
And it can't come from the existing population, because that would require them to step up their spending by about a third. And that's not, if you do the math, and that's likely not to happen.
I can't do that.
Yeah, I don't think most Mississippians can't. So we do need more people, honestly, in our state.
And we need them for the workforce.
Yeah.
Union County, where I'm from, has the lowest unemployment rate in the state, and it's just hard to find jobs or find people for the jobs.
Yeah, it's still even with in the wake of the last 4 years under Joe Biden, where we had inflation and somewhat of an impact that had, but we're still have a low unemployment rate nationwide. Our unemployment rate is also backed up some, and I talk to employers as well that say, yeah, we just can't find the people we need. Still have a problem with that.
And I was thinking about that as I was driving up here about the new $4 billion industrial park in
Grenada.
Yeah. And I'm thinking, they just got Milwaukee's industry, and I mean they're going to be pulling people. But the good news, I think they'll be pulling people from the Delta too.
I do too.
That will really help that.
Well, that's typically what happens at those parks. Whatever gets built there on those sites usually ends up employing people on a kind of a regional basis. They're not just in the local community. Well, this is something I think you have to give credit to the governor on. He recognized a while back that, getting these sites ready to go is key.
And I think he would have been doing this a lot sooner had COVID not hit. I mean, it just kind of sucked all the air out of the room, and that's all he could concentrate on.
I agree. Well, I can tell you with personal experience, it was pivotal in our landing the big AWS project with some risk and investment we made in Madison County to develop that site, acquire that land, develop that site, get it ready to go.
Those are the special sessions that I really like.
Yeah, it's that's fun, and there's more coming there too as well. But this tax deal was really controversial, as we talked about the way that went down, and I think it has kind of put a wedge, unfortunately, between the two chambers.
It has. It has, and I hate it. And outside the Capitol, we're friends, but there's some hurt feelings in this, and I understand why. Yeah.
Well, we'll see where that goes. So. Something that I wanted to get your thoughts on is this attempt to get some form of school choice passed in the state of Mississippi, which it's kind of like repealing the CON. We keep trying, and we don't get it. I just got an email. I was just telling you offline that it looks like South Carolina becoming now the next state to enact universal school choice. That's in the wake of Texas just doing that a couple of weeks ago. So, again, looking at that map, Representative Creekmore, we're like the state that's sticking out, certainly across the southern half of the country here.
It is, and that was discussed in the legislature. The chairman, Rob Robertson, was like, gentlemen, it's coming. Ladies and gentlemen, it is coming.
It's coming, yeah.
And we can do it now, or we're going to be the last one to do it.
Yeah.
And I thought Representative Owens had a good bill, good start to school choice.
That's like entry-level school choice, public-to-public transfer.
That's right. And which we kind of have now, but this just removes some of the red tape. And I thought that was a good way to start. And the mamas and daddies could realize, well, the sky didn't fall, and we can move on. And maybe then we can expand it.
Well, there's been some buzz that maybe that'll make its way into a special session, but I don't see the governor doing that unless he knows he's got the vote.
He's also made the comment he doesn't want us down here very long, and I don't want to be down here very long. So I think that one, especially the way it went in the regular session, could really last a while.
Yeah. Now, I know last year Medicaid was a big topic in your domain there, but this year it wasn't, and I think rightfully so because of the uncertainty with the federal government.
Absolutely. And we met early on, Speaker and I did, and we both were on the same sheet of music. We don't know what the Trump administration is going to do with Medicaid. There's no point in us putting all this, every legislator, House and Senate, through this again when it could all change, in a month.
Yeah. And we
still don't know.
We still don't know, right? And I think we're going to have some clarity here in the next month or so when the Congress acts and passes this budget resolution.
I think so.
The president did submit his plan, which is a requirement under our laws, and so the Congress is mulling that over, and we'll see where that goes. But I think you got to wait and see what happens there.
I thought that was a smart thing.
Could be looking at some
cuts. We finally did something smart.
Yeah. Could be looking at cuts to the existing program, which could put a little pressure on.
That's scaring people.
Appreciate you coming in, Representative Sam Creekmore.
Always enjoy it.
Thanks a lot, man.
Thank you.
Folks, we're stepping aside for a break. We're coming right back in the Element Wealth Studios.
Gerard Gibert. Going beyond the headlines, breaking down the stories that matter to Mississippi. Middays with Gerard on SuperTalk Mississippi.
Welcome back, everyone. It is Middays from the Element Wealth Studio. On the C Spire text line, y'all going to follow this? Tougaloo College commencement speaker is U.S. Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett. That's coming up this Sunday, May the 4th. Yeah, that actually broke a week or so ago, I think. I don't know that we said anything about it on the show. But, I mean, what do you say? It's not totally unexpected or surprising, I guess you would say. I mean, she is a member of the United States Congress. I don't have a great deal of respect for her, certainly don't agree with the things she stands for, and find her to be somewhat disingenuous.
Somewhat's being nice.
At a minimum, you could say that. She portrays herself as a person that really does not correspond with her background. That's one of the other things that bothers me.
Well, at least she finally stopped telling the lie that she became a lawyer because she wanted a way to get back at those that hurled racist abuse at her. Now her story is that she became a lawyer because she did so well in debate.
Oh, my gosh. Okay, great. Thanks for telling us. So, on the C Spire text line, how much of this project money comes from insurance rebate money that is set aside to improve emergency services? What are we talking about there? Project money. Insurance rebate money. Not following that. Appreciate that, though. You fire somebody, you better have cause, or they can claim unemployment and make your insurance go up. They can. I mean, there's it's called an experience factor. That's what's used to determine the cost of unemployment premiums, federal and state. The best thing to do is not to hire people that you have to fire. You can't always call it 100%. No doubt about that. And we were just talking about the fact that there are a lot of people that have jobs that are very much protected. And you find that the case in government. The Trump administration is changing that. There's no doubt about it. Such as, hey, you're coming back to the office or you're fired at a minimum. And that has had a positive impact on the federal government workforce from the standpoint that it's rooted out a lot of the unnecessary workers that I think can land somewhere else and provide some legitimate
Makes me wonder
work.
whatever happened to that girl that was complaining on TikTok all those years ago. Well, not all those years ago. It was a couple years ago now.
Yeah.
About her time blindness.
Oh, that's
her
right.
Her job wouldn't accommodate her time blindness.
I rember that. We
I wonder
talked
where
about
she
that.
is now.
I remember that. We
I
covered
wonder if
that
she
on
ever
the
got
show.
over her time blindness.
Blindness. I forgot all about it. On the C Spire text line, we were talking about the governor's Power Up Mississippi Energy Summit, which I think is a great idea. I applaud him for that. Just ensuring that this state can produce all the energy it needs to accommodate and really attract new economic projects, new business, and bringing in all the players to a summit to discuss that. Great idea. So can Entergy build another nuclear power plant or add to Grand Gulf? And so the reason that question came up is because discussed and reported from that meeting was this: we're all the above in Mississippi with respect to energy. That includes nuclear. That includes natural gas. It includes renewables. And that's a technical question that I don't know that I can answer, Rhino, but certainly we have the ability to stand up another nuclear plant.
I think the ball has already halfway started rolling on at least one site, and I'm drawing a blank on the name of it because it got reported. When was that the Public Service Commission was looking into using a site up in Tishomingo.
Okay.
Oh, the name's going to bug me. It's something Creek site. Yellow Creek site.
Okay.
In Tishomingo. They were looking at at whether or not it would be viable for small modular reactors.
Yeah, SMR, something you and I have discussed numerous times, and that's kind of the new wave in nuclear power. The footprint's considerably smaller. The output is, but it's plenty. I mean, literally, you could have new facilities built that require power, anything from a data center to a factory to a distribution facility that require power that could receive that power and consume that power from a dedicated small modular reactor. They're not even connected to the grid.
Yeah, I found the report. It was from June of 2024 where they were saying that the quote, our best shot in Mississippi for nuclear power in the near future is TVA locating reactors in North Mississippi, talking about the Yellow Creek site in Tishomingo.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I think that's cool. I really do. And again, I think it's great that Mississippi's leadership, starting with the governor, is paying attention to this issue and bringing in all the smart people and the resources they need to discuss it and figure out what's the optimum environment look like to facilitate growing our power footprint. It's going to put us out front when we're competing for these big projects. There's no doubt. That is the new currency. And so one of the things we have in our favor is we already have a fairly streamlined permitting process. We can make that even better. And that, again, will put us on the top when these suitors come knocking or we're knocking on their door and recruiting them to come into the state. That's going to be one of the first questions I ask. How quick can you get us the power? And that often is a function of all this permitting and all the other red tape you have to go through. So, and it is something, by the way, that was mentioned yesterday as part of this summit, is that this needs to be a joint public-private effort. So, again, recognizing this isn't just something that's exclusive to government, and because it's a regulated industry and the industry is operated by private sector entities, having integration there and synergy there is extremely important, and that therefore government needs to listen to and receive input from industry. This is what you could do to help us make more of these investments in your state. So all ears, and then do what's proper and appropriate and strikes a happy medium balance there, and that's consistent with our president as well. So I think that's good. Is affirmative action still in use on hiring? Well, in the private sector, it's legal but not mandated. There were some institutions that were receiving federal money that were engaged in affirmative action programs that ended up discriminating, and the Supreme Court was it the Harvard case, right? I know they ended up striking that down, and that really set a pretty powerful, strong precedent that essentially bans the practice. And that was a lawsuit that was brought on by, I believe, people who had been discriminated against. Said, yeah, we actually are more qualified, but because we didn't, check the boxes here, you let them in and rejected our application. So,
yeah, it was Asian students.
That's right, for Harvard. And Harvard said, wait, they're exceeding right the testing and the qualifications of all the other applicants. We can't have that. We can't let them in. People who would probably...
It messes up the narrative of what minorities can accomplish.
That's true. But aren't they a minority?
It's that soft bigotry of low expectations.
It's ridiculous, though.
Welcome to the mindset of the left.
Well, I'm so glad to see we seem to be in a post-affirmative action DEI world. I happen to believe that's probably one of the president's primary accomplishments was to rooting that out of
deep
government.
Down, everyone on the left secretly wants to be some sort of hero, but deep down they also know that they're also cowards.
Yeah.
That's why they never really accomplish much of anything in life. And if they do, they only adopted the left's ideology as a survival mechanism, because if you don't toe the line and you're surrounded by leftists, things get ugly quickly because they're not very nice people, even though that's the facade they like to put up.
So true.
Deep down, they're deranged and evil.
So true. On the C Spire text line, if I can squeeze this in before we go to break for the next segment, someone said, I wish Trump would stop the tax breaks that ensure foreign ownership of our gas stations. Let Americans have a fair shot. That's Flynn Fogarty in Oxford. And I asked what those tax breaks were. I'll get to that on the other side of the break. We're stepping aside right now, coming right back with Middays. Final segments next.
Are the trees in trouble?
Gerard Gibert. He keeps his classified documents right where they belong. Inside a Journey record jacket from the 1980s. Gerard Gibert, SuperTalk, Mississippi.
Hey, you get closer. The lights are going dim. The sound of your breathing has made the mood I'm in. All of my resistance lying on the floor.
Welcome back, everyone. It's Middays, Super Talk Mississippi, final segment today before we head on out for the weekend. So, yeah, just back to that real quick. There are no tax breaks. You may have meant something related to preferential treatment with SBA loans, but that really has been in place for decades, and that applies to minorities and veterans and other demographics that receive sort of a preferential treatment from the SBA, Small Business Administration.
For the approval of a loan.
Right. But
they don't get any better terms.
No better terms. Still have to pay it back, right? And you've always been able to transfer them. I mean, that's not a big deal. But there are no tax breaks. Everybody pays the same taxes. And unless there's some sort of concession made at the local level, but it wouldn't be because of their nationality or ethnicity. That would just be some deal cut between the municipality, the county, and the business owner in that particular case. Dave from Ripley sent, I've seen this before, he sent a link to a video that shows in Georgia where Meta has a significant data center presence. I think it's Newton County, if I'm not mistaken, that it's causing problems for the water for nearby residents, the water pressure. It is true that the cooling systems do require water, and you've got to have a lot of cooling in a data center because all that equipment produces heat. And if you don't cool it, then the equipment starts to fail. But you can't blame this on the data center and Meta and the owners of it. This is on the part of the people who negotiated this deal that didn't properly engineer. I can tell you that happened in Madison County. There's a lot of work behind the scenes to accommodate the water needs and ensure that wouldn't be a problem. It's a resource just like electricity is. And thus energy spending $2.5 billion on new generation and transmission to accommodate the increase in power consumption from the facilities. So this is just a poor planning, a situation where there was poor planning or no planning perhaps. I'm a little surprised that it got all the way to that level because that could have an impact on the data centers themselves if they can't get the water that they need to properly cool the equipment inside of it. So it's certainly not a reason to stop the evolution and to just continue the investment and the build-out. It's powering our world, and it's becoming rapidly a matter of national security just because of the use of artificial intelligence and, of course, quantum computing.
But if you're a person that has had to be drugged kicking and screaming into understanding what an email is or how to get on the internet, then you're just going to continue having to be drugged kicking and screaming into the future. You're not really of the mindset to embrace the change that is coming.
Yeah, and that I would say is a bit naive and unfortunate, because it's necessary, honestly, just for a sustainable society. If you think about...
Their argument would be that they lived in a sustained society that didn't have any of this.
Yeah, but the pressure on our resources was not the same. You know what I'm saying here. I know I'm preaching to the choir. The perennial...
I'm being the Luddite devil's advocate.
The fundamental human problem since humans have inhabited the earth has always been supply and demand. It doesn't matter what it is and what time period it is. That has always been the question. And so how do we address the ever-increasing demand with the ever-dwindling supply? Technology, innovation, human innovation.
Yeah, that goes back to as early as salt.
That's exactly right.
Salt, this rock that makes stuff taste good and preserves things. We got to get it from here to there. That's really heavy, though, because it's rocks. What if we just salted the stuff we were going to salt there and took it there instead? That's literally like some of the earliest supply and demand calculations were, all right, how much is it going to cost me to carry salt versus salting the fish they were going to salt over there and just taking the fish? That was part of the boom of ancient Egypt, was they figured out, you know what, I ain't going to carry rocks. I can just carry salted fish. They want the salted fish. That's why they want the salt.
Well, and that made me think about, is it not just human instinct to live? Live as long as you can, right? Well, guess what? Because of that motivated our innovation, innovative skills, and our assets, our resources. And so we figured out ways to keep people alive longer. That's a good thing. But that means we need more resources. So we got to innovate to figure out how to supply the resources to keep people alive. You know what I'm saying here. This ain't hard to figure out. We're out of here today. Thanks so much for joining us. Have a great weekend, everyone. Back with you again Monday. Stay safe and God bless.
A SuperTalk Mississippi media production.